the greatest story ever told. Please play with me. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Every now and then we catch a glimpse of God, a hint of heaven, usually in the ordinary events of life. The day my mom died, and my then 3-year-old daughter looked at me and said, "Daddy, there's no leukemia with Jesus." The day in seminary when we were talking about heaven, and yet with the snow billowing outside and the chapel service just being completed, I had a sense that I was experiencing heaven. The day a member of this congregation came back running into the sanctuary and said, "Pastor Dave, I just saw God in the tree behind the youth pavilion." Wednesday a week ago, when 450 people jammed into the Lutheran Church of the Redeemer to remember the life of Carrie Roundtree. The days that Sophie and Savannah were born, who have quickly become for me the hope of the world. I know. It's just a glimpse. Just a hint. But I don't know where my life would be without it. You've seen them too, haven't you? When the veil has been parted and the clouds have been lifted and you caught a glimpse of God, usually in the places and the people and the events you least expected. Every now and then we catch a glimpse. We catch a glimpse every Sunday morning. It's called the Sacrament of Holy Communion. Matthew just told us that one day during dinner, Jesus took and blessed and broke and gave the bread. And ladies and gentlemen, Christians have been taking and blessing and breaking and giving the bread ever since. Luther himself could not envision the Mass without the Eucharist. Why? What's so special about it? A little bit of wafer and a little bit of poor wine. How in the world can that hold a hint of heaven, a glimpse of God? Well, sometimes when we prepare for this sacrament, we use the words of an old offertory which reads, "Grace our table with your presence and give us a feast of the foretaste to come." That's what this is. A hint of heaven. A hint of that great banquet when God's world will be opened up and the glorious Lord, the Lord of the Lords, will be present in the midst of all of God's people. A taste of the great banquet where divisions and hatred and violence and anger will be a thing of the past. That's what this meal is all about, if it is about anything that matters. A glimpse of the dining room of the living God. Did you notice this morning when you came in? Did you notice that there were no ushers monitoring the color of your skin and the size of your wallet and the zip code of your subdivision? Nobody asking questions about your sexual preference or your political persuasion? Did you notice that there were no priests or pastors acknowledging your religious affiliation? No seminary professors wanting to know if you had a clear understanding of the doctrine of real presence? At this meal, ladies and gentlemen, nobody cares about how many sins you've committed, how much money you have, how many community service hours you've given. At this table, in this dining room, in front of that God, the invitation to come is based not on our worthiness to receive it, but on God's desire to give it. A foretaste of the feast to come. So come. Put away all the divisions that divide you and come as the brothers and sisters of Christ that we all of us are. Come and taste the amazing grace of God. And having come, is it then possible to go out there and live out this meal? Is it possible to be as hospitable and as accepting to others as God has been to us? Is it possible that having come to this meal, we can become this meal? Did you hear that? Is it possible, having come to this meal, that we could become this meal? That we could go out there and offer a foretaste of the feast to come to anybody we meet, even those who looked and act and believe and vote differently than we do? Is that possible? On that first Palm Sunday morning, Jesus walked into Jerusalem to give a foretaste of the feast to come, a hint of heaven. If you and I spend our lives sharing that hint, then we will have something to wave our palms about.